How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
This is a paid advertisement from BetterHelp. Let's pause and take a moment to talk about something very important. Life has its pressures for everyone, and we often carry the immense weight of expectation to never show weakness, to hide our true feelings, and believe that asking for support somehow makes us less of a person. But bottling things up isn't the answer. It can often lead to feeling down, burnout, or other unhealthy habits. We want to normalize the idea that it's okay to struggle. Real strength actually comes from opening up about what you are carrying and doing something about it so that you can be at your best for yourself and everyone in your life. If you're feeling the weight of the world, or even if things just feel a bit off, I can't stress enough the value of talking to someone. It could be a friend, a loved one, or a therapist. We here at This Week Explained believe that therapy can be incredibly valuable. Whether you've been in therapy personally or not, the broader benefits are clear. It's so helpful for learning positive coping skills, understanding how to set healthy boundaries, and it really empowers you to be the best version of yourself. And it's so important to remember that therapy isn't just for those who've experienced combat or major trauma. It's a tool for anyone looking to improve their mental well-being and navigate life's challenges. That's why we're thrilled to talk about BetterHelp. With over 5,000 therapists in the UK, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. And it clearly resonates with users, boasting an App Store rating of 4.9 out of 5 stars based on over 1.7 million client reviews. It's also incredibly convenient. You can connect with a therapist at the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy schedule. And you can even switch therapists at any time if you feel it's not the right fit. And here's something special for our listeners. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp is offering our listeners 10% off their first month. What are you waiting for? Talk it out with BetterHelp. Once again, our listeners get 10% off their first month by going to betterhelp.com/thisweek. That's BetterHelp.com/thisweek. Tired of feeling overwhelmed by the headlines? Want to truly understand the why behind the global chaos? Then you are in the right place. Welcome to This Week Explained, your weekly deep dive into the most complex and impactful stories shaping our world. I'm Tiana, and joining me as always is Kervin. Before we jump into the crucial developments of the week, a quick favor. If you want to ensure you never miss an episode, make sure you're following or subscribed on your podcast platform. It literally takes 2 seconds and keeps you instantly updated. And if you are getting value from what we do here, a simple rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify helps us reach more curious minds like yours. And don't forget the new interactive comments on Spotify. It's a fantastic way to engage directly with the show and other listeners, extending the conversation beyond the broadcast. You can also find more fantastic podcasts like ours by visiting leonmedianetwork.com, part of the awesome Leon Media Network. This week, we're diving into the latest from Ukraine and Gaza and Iran's threats toward U.S. President Donald Trump. Let's kick things off with the war in Ukraine. Last week, we discussed the unsettling news of a temporary halt in U.S. arms shipments to Ukraine, raising concerns about the immediate impact on their defenses. Today, we have a significant update. So, Kervin, let's jump right on into it. What is the latest on military supplies to Ukraine?
Oh, Tiana, the good news here is that the U.S. has resumed military supplies to Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky even confirmed this a week after the U.S. briefly paused some critical arms shipments. This is a crucial development given the escalating situation on the ground from Russia.
We keep doing that, though. Didn't Hegseth pause it twice? We talked about that last week, didn't we?
We talked about that last week, yeah, and it kept getting... the word the media would use is overturned. The word or the phrase that the White House and the Trump administration would use is it was reevaluated and then extended. So, yeah, they paused it for a bit. Now they've opened it back up, sending munitions to Ukraine, helping in the defense of Ukraine from Russian attacks, which have escalated astronomically, I would say, in the last couple of months now.
Well, that has got to be a huge relief for Kyiv. We heard about President Trump's involvement. So can you elaborate on the details of this renewed aid, especially regarding the highly sought-after Patriot air defense systems?
Yeah, absolutely. And President Trump announced that he did strike a deal with NATO for the U.S. to send Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine via that alliance. And this is a significant move, especially after that surge of Russian aerial attacks that I just alluded to. And Trump stated that NATO is actually going to reimburse the full cost of these munitions. And we know, as we discussed last week, NATO has agreed to increase defense funding. I'm sure that's all part of the process of this whole agreement that they have here. And Zelensky also added that Germany is ready to pay for 2 Patriot missile systems. Norway is going to pay for 1, so that's 3 additional systems for Ukraine. And then other European partners are prepared to contribute. I'm sure Poland is going to be one of those that are going to push to contribute to a Patriot air defense because Russia is right there on the border. So this multilateral approach is a clear sign of urgency for Western Europe.
So this is not just the U.S. directly, but a broader coordinated effort through NATO. That's it's a novel approach. So what was the specific concern when the shipments were initially halted, and how critical are these Patriot systems?
Yeah, the pause had Zelensky highly concerned because he's concerned about the impact on Ukraine's defenses, particularly with critical armaments like Patriot systems and precision artillery shells being stopped. Now, these Patriot batteries are absolutely vital to Ukraine. They detect and intercept incoming missiles. They're considered the world's best air defense system. Ukraine has been requesting them for a few months now, and each additional battery allows them to protect more cities and more critical infrastructure. They are expensive, though. They're about $1 billion for one battery. So one battery, one system. And that explains why allies have been hesitant to part with them from their own stocks.
That cost certainly highlights their value and the commitment required. So let's shift the discussion to these Russian attacks that you've been alluding to. The public information we have points to a significant increase in recent weeks. What is the current state of the war on the ground, especially regarding these aerial assaults?
Yeah, the situation on the ground remains incredibly tense and has, in fact, as I said, worsened in terms of aerial attacks. So Russia has drastically stepped up its drone and missile bombardments on Ukrainian cities. Just this week, Ukraine reported that Russia launched over 700 attack and decoy drones overnight. This relentless assault is designed to overwhelm Ukrainian air defenses, and these attacks have actually led to a 3-year high in civilian casualties in the month of June. Now, the UN has verified at least 232 people have been killed in the last month and over 1,300 injured.
Are we talking about civilians? Do they keep, unlike the fighting in Gaza where Hamas lumps in civilian and Hamas deaths all together? Is it, did they do the same thing here?
No, that is not the case. And that's just because of the reporting system, right? So UN is on the ground and the Ukrainian health services, along with Western European health services, are corroborating those numbers. And so these are civilian casualties.
Well, that is a devastating toll. Are there specific areas being targeted, and how is Ukraine attempting to counter these attacks?
Yeah, absolutely. So Russian forces are increasingly concentrating massive strike packages against I think there's 2 main target cities, and they're trying to overwhelm the defenses of those cities. Those would be Kyiv and Kharkiv. They've been hit particularly hard over the last month. Just this week, a Russian drone attack in Kharkiv damaged a maternity hospital. It's devastating for the people of Ukraine. And in response, Ukraine is ramping up its own drone interceptor programs. Kyiv City, for example, is allocating funds for what they call a Clean Sky program. That program is to use interceptor drones to defend against nightly attacks there in the city. While Ukrainian air defenses are intercepting many of these incoming projectiles, they reportedly shot down 296 drones and 7 missiles out of that recent record barrage. The sheer volume is a massive challenge to Ukraine. Now, Ukrainian intelligence also believes Russia is expanding its domestic drone production, and some analysts suggest that they could soon launch 1,000 drones a night.
1,000 drones a night? I mean, I can see why there is such an urgency for these Patriot deliveries. But beyond air defense, what other developments are we seeing on the battlefield this week?
Yeah, so on the battlefield, Russian forces have made some limited advances, particularly in Donetsk and Sumy regions. Ukrainian intelligence, however, assesses that Russia's goal of seizing the entirety of Donetsk by the end of 2025 is not realistic. There have also been reports of Ukrainian counterattacks in areas near Sumy. The Institute for the Study of War notes that Russian forces are taking very high casualties for a disproportionately small amount of gains.
That sounds like a grinding war of attrition, with the aerial dimension becoming even more critical. So what about the diplomatic front? We know Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. So what came of those discussions?
Yeah, they actually met in Malaysia this week, and while Secretary Rubio described the conversation as frank, he echoed President Trump's frustration at the lack of progress in peace talks and Russia's perceived inflexibility. Now, Rubio mentioned that they shared some new ideas on how the conflict should conclude or could conclude, which he was going to go and take it back to Trump, but no specifics have been revealed as of yet. Now, interestingly, Russia's foreign ministry readout emphasized discussions about bilateral U.S.-Russian issues rather than just talking about the conflict in Ukraine or Ukraine itself. So that suggests a potential Kremlin effort to shift that focus.
And President Trump himself has indicated some growing frustration with Putin. Not just indicated, he's flat out stated that he's frustrated with Putin.
Yes.
He also mentioned a, quote, major statement, end quote, on Russia coming on Monday. So that's tomorrow for us, probably day of for you guys. Any idea what that might entail?
Yeah, and that's the billion-dollar question here, Tiana. So Trump told NBC News that he was, quote, not happy, end quote, with Putin, and the lack of progress towards ending the war is something he is very concerned about. Trump is. He even complained that Putin's very nice attitude turned out to be meaningless. Had President Trump been listening to this podcast, he would have already known that that was probably going to happen, because we kind of harp on that a lot on this podcast. Can't trust what Putin says. He's only trying to do what his original goal was, which is to take over Kyiv and take over all of Ukraine. Now, Trump confirmed he would make a major statement on Monday, the day this episode will come out, but he gave no hints about what is going to be in that statement. Now, given the renewed aid and his expressed frustration, it could range from further escalations and support for Ukraine, maybe a new diplomatic initiative, or perhaps even a more direct challenge to Putin's approach. We'll have to wait and see.
We do. Gotta wait till tomorrow. So finally, Kervin, any other significant geopolitical developments that stand out from this past week?
So on a related note, there has been some movement regarding future stabilization efforts. European allies with a U.S. delegation that was present there for the first time have agreed to establish a headquarters in Paris, France, for a post-ceasefire multinational force for Ukraine. If you remember, we've discussed this on the podcast a few months ago, having a multinational force of peacekeepers once the ceasefire is agreed to. And this force would provide logistical and training support to reconstitute Ukraine's armed forces. Also, the UK announced a new defense agreement with Ukraine that would include additional military assistance and joint defense production, providing over 5,000 air defense interceptors. This highlights the growing commitment from European partners to bolster Ukraine's long-term security. And one more thing, the European Court of Human Rights issued a ruling on July 9th, and they found Russia responsible for flagrant and widespread human rights violations in occupied parts of Ukraine and during the full-scale invasion. That includes indiscriminate attacks, summary executions, and even the use of rape as a weapon of war.
That is vile. Even though
Absolutely.
that ruling isn't going to result in anything, is it? It's just them saying, just stating it, like putting it on record that they don't agree with what's happening.
Absolutely. It's one for the history books, right? So 100 years later, what they're thinking is, at least it is written that the European Court of Human Rights knew this was going on. They couldn't do anything to stop it, but they pointed the finger at Russia for doing. Yeah, okay. There's no legal binding in any of this.
Yeah. So an important reminder of the human cost of this conflict. We will be watching for President Trump's statement on Monday and the ongoing developments in Ukraine, but that will have to wait for next week's episode. So now let's shift to the Middle East, and more specifically, the war in Gaza. I want to start with a rather extraordinary development involving Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and some very strong words aimed at the New York Times. His office issued, then very quickly retracted, a lengthy statement this week. So, Kervin, walk us through what happened here.
Yeah, very interesting moment there. The core of it was this New York Times report that essentially accused Prime Minister Netanyahu of prolonging the Gaza war, with the implied motive being to rehabilitate his political standing after the October 7th atrocities and to cling to power. This isn't a novel idea. It's just that the New York Times wrote about it, got sources and quoted those sources, and basically wrote it as if this was factual. I say that as if this was factual because we just don't know. It could 100% be factual that is why he's prolonging this war. I think you've said that on many occasions, Sienna.
That I've said that.
Not in a sense that we have the sources and we've fact checked all of it, but reading between the lines and seeing what has been going on. Yeah,
a gut feeling.
Right. This is the New York Times saying we have sources. We know for a fact that this is what's going on. And that's why Benjamin Netanyahu hasn't tried to shut down this podcast, but he is trying to shut down what the New York Times is doing in this report. Now, Netanyahu's office fired back with a remarkably forceful and English language statement. Now, importantly, as you said, it was deleted shortly after being published, and that was around midnight on a Shabbat, or their Sabbath day.
Deleted. That's almost as newsworthy as the statement itself. So what exactly did this statement say in his defense?
Yeah, it was a full-throttle rebuttal. The statement vehemently denounced the New York Times report. They said they called it a rehashing of discredited and false political activists and their talking points. And they asserted that it defames Israel, the brave people of Israel, and its prime minister. The statement argued that Netanyahu and his cabinet's strategic decisions led to, I'll quote them here, quote, one of the greatest military comebacks in history, end quote. That Netanyahu was able to transform Israel from a perceived weakness on October 7th to a paramount regional power with significantly weakened enemies.
I never thought they were weak, even when they got attacked on October 7th. That was not what came to mind at all. I don't know. I just thought, because eventually the bad guys are going to figure out how to weasel their way in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
we got...
Absolutely.
I mean, don't get me wrong, we messed up when it came to September 11th because we were warned that there was a possibility that something like that would happen. We just ignored it. But that's not us being weak. That's us being dumb.
Yeah, I think so. And I'll take from my perspective, I would agree with you on that. I thought that their intelligence community had lapsed in defending and securing the people of Israel. But to think that the state of Israel was weak, that was not something I don't think anyone was writing in any aspect
I don't think so. I don't think they were perceived that way at all. They took it that way because their egos aren't in check.
Yeah.
But, you know.
And maybe that says more about how they felt internally than those external reporting.
Yeah, they personally don't want to be perceived as weak, but
Absolutely not.
I mean, obviously that is a bold claim that they made within the statement, which was quote one of the greatest military comebacks in history, end quote. So, did the statement offer any specifics to back that up?
Yeah, it sure did. It listed several of the key military successes under Netanyahu's leadership, like the Battle of Rafah. They claimed that shut down the Philadelphia corridor. That was used for smuggling weapons by Hamas. They talked about the covert detonation of Hezbollah pagers and destruction of Hezbollah missile stockpiles, the destruction of Assad's armaments, and even the targeted killing of terrorist chiefs like Deif, Hania, Sinwar, and Nasrallah. And they also mentioned the decisive action against the Iranian nuclear and ballistic missile existential threats, which is what they call the nuclear and ballistic missile program in Iran. These existential threats that Iran has in the carrying out of that attack in the Rising Lion operation from a few weeks ago.
I think we have at this podcast have covered each one of those quote unquote achievements. So did the statement also address the fact that Netanyahu has repeatedly ignored advice from his own security establishment, or did they forget that part?
Yeah, they did. Just a twist on, what they said about it. So they specifically contended that these achievements wouldn't have been possible if Netanyahu had accepted early recommendations from senior defense and security officials to end the war. According to the statement, that would have left Hamas, Hezbollah, the Assad regime, and Iranian threats intact. I tend to believe that. History is going to tell if it was the right move or the wrong move. But post October 7th, every single one of those entities that I mentioned have been either completely wiped out or lowered as a less secure, and their leadership has been completely destroyed. So we'll see if they come back in the next few years, but so far that has been true. They also had a very pointed line stating that these senior officials, whose anonymous supporters are widely quoted throughout the article, have since been replaced, meaning they have moved all of those, what they would call leakers, out of the government. So that was a clear jab there at the New York Times reporting, and implicitly at those within the Israeli establishment who may have been its sources.
I wouldn't put it past Israel to have already found out who the leaks were.
Oh, yeah, Mossad's got it, and they moved them out.
Sure.
That's no doubt.
For sure. They knew they were leaking as they were leaking, I'm sure. They were like, let's do what they do here. And then when they did it, Anyway, so what about the ongoing hostage situation? That's been a massive point of contention for his government domestically.
Yeah, the statement also addressed that directly. It defended Netanyahu's approach to freeing hostages held in Gaza. They said his, quote, forceful application of combined military and diplomatic pressure has so far achieved the release of 205 hostages out of a total of 255, end quote. It reiterated his commitment to securing the return of the remaining 50, specifying that 20 of those 50 are still alive.
So, in essence, the statement framed Netanyahu as a strong, decisive leader whose actions were for the good of Israel and not for his own political gain.
Yeah, and you would expect nothing less coming from his office, or any world leader's office, for that matter. This isn't unique to Benjamin Netanyahu. It's not a particularly unbiased group, so it was a comprehensive defense, though, as we noted, one that was very quickly pulled offline. Now, the reasons for that deletion remain at least officially unexplained.
A deleted statement, a strong rebuttal, and a defense of aggressive military action, all while dealing with internal pressure. So It paints a complex picture of Netanyahu's current political landscape.
Yeah, it sure does. And it just goes to show the immense pressure, both internal and external, that his government is operating under. Now, the New York Times article clearly struck a nerve with them, which prompted this unusually strong, albeit fleeting, response.
And speaking of pressure, Kervin, let's not forget the broader regional picture. We also had a report this week about U.S. President Donald Trump's reaction to a potential Israeli strike on Iran. This is a recurring concern, especially after October 7th. So what did this report indicate?
Yeah, that report indicated that U.S. President Donald Trump did not object when Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu mentioned Israel might strike Iran again if the Islamic Republic restarts its nuclear weapons program. And this is significant as it suggests a degree of tacit acceptance, or at least a lack of direct prohibition from the United States.
So a green light, or at least an amber one from the U.S. side.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a full green light, and the report, in true geopolitical style, is very nuanced. While Trump reportedly didn't object, it also states that he favors a diplomatic solution, and he is hoping to use the threat of further attacks to encourage Iran to sign a deal. That deal would bar it from developing that nuclear bomb. Now, the threat of force as a leverage for diplomacy is something that Trump is starting to use more and more increasingly, especially towards Iran.
But if Israel is prepared to act, does that mean they will always seek U.S. approval first?
Well, the report does address that. It suggests that Trump might actually pressure Netanyahu not to strike Iran in order to preserve diplomatic talks. Now, it quotes a senior Israeli official who stated that Israel might not necessarily seek an explicit American green light before that attack. This official also noted that Israel has intelligence on potential covert Iranian nuclear activities, and it believes it can prevent Iran from quickly developing nuclear weapons in the short term. So it's a complex dance of deterrence, diplomacy, and potential unilateral action.
So we have Netanyahu pushing back hard against media reports, consolidating his image as a strong leader, potentially with a U.S. nod on Iran, and Israel asserting its independence in security matters. It really speaks to the unpredictable nature of regional power plays. Enough talk about Netanyahu for now. I want to shift our focus on the ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas. So what's the current state of play there? We hear so much back and forth.
Yeah, it is constantly evolving, and it's often a frustrating situation, as you just alluded to there. Now, as of now, a comprehensive ceasefire deal remains elusive. There have been multiple rounds of negotiations, but as we've discussed week in and week out, we are consistently hitting roadblocks in these discussions.
Okay, so what are the primary sticking points? Is it still about the number of hostages or the duration of the pause or something else entirely?
It's really just a combination of factors, but the core issues remain consistent. So on the Hamas side, they are generally demanding a permanent ceasefire as part of any deal. They want a complete withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza. They also want guarantees regarding reconstruction and the lifting of the aid blockade. Now, for Israel, the primary objective is the return of all remaining hostages. They've been adamant that any ceasefire must be temporary and cannot compromise the long-term goal of eliminating Hamas's military and governing capabilities.
And we just heard in the previous segment how Prime Minister Netanyahu's office explicitly stated his commitment to that very goal. Quote, the elimination of Hamas's military and governing capabilities to ensure that the October 7th massacre will never be repeated again, end quote. That certainly doesn't sound like a permanent ceasefire.
Exactly. So that stated commitment from Netanyahu's office really highlights the fundamental gap between the two sides. Now, Hamas views a permanent end to hostilities and Israeli withdrawal as non-negotiable, and they will not agree to it, and they will not perform a significant hostage release until that happens. Now, Israel sees any permanent ceasefire before Hamas is dismantled as a threat to its own security. We've seen proposals involving multiple phases with initial pauses and limited hostage releases, but they often falter on the commitment to a lasting cessation of the fighting in Gaza.
So, in essence, we're in a persistent state of flux with ongoing efforts, but no immediate breakthrough in sight, right?
I mean, that's the most accurate assessment I have heard maybe ever, Tiana. That is exactly what's going on here.
Stop. Really, just stop. I'm just kidding.
It's like you've been following this since October 7th of 2023. You really drilled down where we stand at the moment.
On that note, we are going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll pivot to a truly unorthodox proposal coming out of the West Bank and what it might mean or not mean for the future of Palestinian governance. So please stay with us. We'll be right back.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back, listeners. Before the break, we were discussing the very direct and often confrontational geopolitical maneuvering in the Middle East. But now, Carvin, we're going to shift gears and discuss something that on the surface sounds like it could come straight out of a political thriller, an unorthodox peace proposal emerging from a group of sheikhs on the West Bank. So could this really be the key to peace?
The short answer here is absolutely not. But despite that unlikelihood, this proposal has certainly stirred up a lot of discussion and, for some, even excitement, particularly among those who are eager to advance a peace agreement that sidesteps the possible creation of a Palestinian state.
Okay, so if not a real peace plan, then what exactly is this proposal? Like, who are these sheikhs and what are they putting forward?
Well, the proposal comes from 5 prominent, though mostly anonymous, sheikhs in the Hebron region. And the letter outlining the plan, which was first reported by the Wall Street Journal, came from Sheikh Wadi al-Jabari. He's a senior figure in one of Hebron's most influential clans, and it was actually addressed to Israel's economy minister, that's Nir Barkat. They offered full recognition of Israel as a Jewish state and proposed a peaceful break from the Palestinian Authority to form an autonomous Emirate of Hebron aligned with the Abraham Accords.
An Emirate of Hebron. This is fascinating. Every time we discuss Israel and the Middle East, you always bring up how none of the Arab states will agree to a Jewish state in the Middle East. But now, after all this fighting, started by Hamas and escalated by Israel, we are seeing fractures in that anti-Jewish state alliance. So what would this emirate entail?
Well, according to the letter, this region would partner with Israel and include zero tolerance for terrorism. Sheikh Jabari himself told the Wall Street Journal that he and other sheikhs understood that there was no point in pressing for a Palestinian state. He was quoted saying, "There will be no Palestinian state. Not even in 1,000 years, not ever. After October 7th, Israel will not give it."
It's kind of wild that they are like, it's up to Israel. But, I mean, those are powerful words, and they sound a lot like we've heard from some Israeli officials. So how has this been received on the Israeli side?
Yeah, obviously Israel has praised the proposal, arguing that the Palestinian Authority has lost the trust of both its own people and the Israeli public. And he stated, or the Israeli government has stated that Sheikh Jabari wants peace with Israel and to join the Abraham Accords with the support of his fellow sheikhs, who in Israel is going to say no to that. So certainly some enthusiasm from the Israeli side.
Well, okay, let's look at it from the other side. This has to be controversial within Palestine and surrounding Arab states. So what has been the reaction to this proposal from that side?
Well, unfortunately, this past week, Sheikh al-Jabari's car was set ablaze in East Jerusalem. It was an act of vandalism widely seen as a direct response to his proposal. And significantly, some members of his own family formally disowned him. So, immediate and quite dramatic response from the Palestinian side.
What kind of car? Do you know what kind of car it was?
I don't. I'm sure it's a Mercedes SUV.
Yeah,
It's
something super fancy that nobody could actually afford. Okay.
As people are starving, yeah.
Yeah, while people are starving and also in the middle of conflict and all this stuff, and he comes along with his fancy car. Okay, well, that speaks volumes about the internal Palestinian reaction. So what do experts on Palestinian society say about the feasibility of such a plan?
Like, they are overwhelmingly skeptical. They say that the plan was neither new nor feasible. They pointed out that a similar proposal from Wadi al-Jabari's father, Sheikh Farid Jabari, made headlines back in 2012. The current proposal has been described as a fantasy of some on Israel's far right who see the Palestinian Authority as the enemy and who hope for an alternative vision, whether through tribal emirates or a federate model. And that federate model would then eliminate the prospect of Palestinian statehood altogether.
So it's less about genuine Palestinian aspirations and more about an Israeli strategic desire.
Yeah, that's the strong implication from many experts. One of those experts suggested that the Jabaris are largely motivated by nostalgia. They want to restore a golden era from the 1940s to late 1970s when their clan held significant sway and ties with Israeli authorities. Now, the proposal explicitly rejects the two-state solution. They seek to replace the Oslo Accords from the 90s, which they claim only brought damage, death, economic disaster, and destruction.
And beyond the political aspirations, were there any concrete economic components to this proposal?
Well, there were some. So the plan included a step-by-step proposal to allow 1,000 Hebron residents to begin working in Israel. The goal of that would be to gradually increase that number to 50,000. And this is significant because since October 7th, Israel has sharply reduced Palestinian work permits. They've cut off a key source of income to Palestinians. Now, the proposal also included the creation of a joint economic zone on over 1,000 acres near the security fence. That's expected to employ tens of thousands of Palestinians.
So what is the ultimate vision if this Hebron plot succeeds?
The idea was for Hebron to serve as a pilot for a broader transformation in the West Bank. That would mean that other cities like Bethlehem would potentially transition to independent local emirates. And this plan, by the way, has been in development for years now.
So it has some intellectual backing in certain Israeli circles, but what about the broader Palestinian reaction beyond the car attack and the family disownment?
Yeah, widespread dismissal. Palestinian activists called the Wall Street Journal article a dangerous fabrication. They accused its author of shockingly poor journalism or deliberate misinformation. Elior Levy, he's a Palestinian affairs correspondent. He dismissed it as nonsense, said words come cheap, and these recycled statements have led to nothing.
How is it misinformation if it came out that they really were having this discussion with this sheikh?
Yeah, how is it misinformation from the New York Times when you also claim that these were sources from inside your government that you got rid of? So
Right. Okay.
just
So
throw it around.
yeah, we just like throwing misinformation around when we don't like what the words say.
That is absolutely true. Misinformation can now be defined as anything you don't like.
Kind of like how everybody throws the word gaslight around. Like,
Right.
it's just like it's somebody who doesn't agree with you, so you throw the word gaslight around to put it back on them, even though you really just don't like what they're saying to you. It's not.
Although we are being gaslit on the Epstein list, and that's all I'll say about that.
I am not going there because I'm infuriated. Like
Yes.
part of his platform for getting elected. Yes, we are going off on a tangent.
This is an opinion as well, but
This is also
one I hold strongly to.
well, part of what got him elected was him saying that he would release all those files.
Yeah.
A lot of people wanted these people to be held accountable for, and he's burying it. So, and
the internet is forever.
The internet is forever now. And I mean, it's too bad you can't do that now. You can't gaslight us because we have the receipts. So anyway,
Yes.
let's bring it back. Let's go back to what we are supposed to be talking about. So tell us about the intelligence community's perspective on this.
On Epstein or on
not Epstein, about.
Oh, okay.
Fine.
All right. Well, yeah. We could get into the other one. That could be a whole episode. But for this, talking about joining into these Emirates, the intelligence community is very skeptical. They've said that the initiative reflects a persistent fantasy among some in Israel that instead of dealing with the unified Palestinian leadership with national aspirations, it might be possible to divide Palestinian society into clans and local emirates, sort of this divide and conquer approach that would erode the idea of statehood. They say no one in the Palestinian arena buys into this. It has even been compared to Israel's reliance on the Abu Shabaab clan in Gaza. This is a local militia that Israel has backed to counter Hamas, which has not worked. They're calling it a situation where fantasies override clear-eyed assessment.
Well, it sounds like this proposal, while intriguing to some on paper, fundamentally misunderstands the prevailing Palestinian national identity.
So that's the consensus among most experts. And look, when we discuss complex issues like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we always want to turn to the experts to get the real answers. They have this deep knowledge of the history, the nuances, and their knowledge on the politics is invaluable. Often, they do reach a clear consensus, but sometimes experts really just can't see the forest for the trees. And what do I mean by that is that their decades of meticulous focus creates tunnel vision, and they get so caught up in the minutia, the specific clauses, the the internal politics, that they struggle to zoom out. And questioning these foundations can kind of feel counterintuitive. They also have the unconscious bias aspect to this. This makes it incredibly difficult to envision a scenario where their long-held vision is actually a flawed vision, or perhaps.
I don't know if it's an unconscious bias. I think it's a conscious bias.
You think it's very conscious? Okay. I won't push back against that, honestly.
Come on.
But you know where I'm trying to get at this. It's just like I know I've studied this so much that I absolutely know everything about this. And so anything that contradicts that won't work for them. They just can't see it. They see what they expect, filtering out anything that just doesn't fit their beliefs or their bias. There's also the humiliation factor. For leading experts, publicly admitting past theories or solutions might be wrong carries a significant professional risk, could be a monetary risk. This can unfortunately outweigh the immense benefit of bringing peace to the millions of Palestinians who desperately want it. It discourages exploring radical new ideas or admitting miscalculations in their expertise. So while I absolutely respect the experts, I really respect all the experts on both sides of this, it is vital to have a healthy skepticism when they're talking. We got to ask, are perspectives being missed? Are we too focused on details to see a simpler, maybe unconventional path forward that could kind of break the deadlock? And sometimes, the most profound insights come from stepping outside of that forest entirely.
Okay, Kervin, let's reset. We just touched on the critical idea that sometimes the very depth of expertise can create blind spots, especially when high stakes and complex, deeply emotional issues are at play. But for now, shifting gears entirely, we need to address a situation that has exploded onto the global stage this past week. and that's the escalating tensions between the United States and Iran. It's gone from a simmering concern to a full-blown crisis with truly blistering rhetoric and concerning developments on both sides. So, take us back to the start of this week, way back a few days ago.
Decades ago.
What were the initial flashpoints that ignited this rapid escalation? And what's the context we need to understand the severity of the current situation? And crucially, from both Washington and Tehran, what kind of fiery rhetoric have we been hearing that's pushed us to this brink? Lay out the stage for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So this past week, it has indeed been a significant turning point. And it kicked off with a truly incendiary development. The initial flashpoint was Iran's supreme leader, and he publicly claimed victory over Israel, which by extension means that it was victory over the United States. This was a deeply provocative move, and he threatened to attack more U.S. military bases as well. This is not just an isolated statement. It essentially marked Supreme Leader Khomeini breaking his silence after what had been a somewhat fragile ceasefire between Israel and Iran, and a ceasefire that itself followed a series of mutual bombings between the two nations and a subsequent F-bomb by U.S. President Trump. So this rhetoric from Khomeini was a direct and very public escalation from Tehran, setting the stage for everything that followed.
And President Trump's response was, to put it mildly, immediate and forceful.
Yeah, forceful is an understatement. Trump directly addressed Khomeini during a White House press conference on Friday, essentially told Khomeini he'd been beat to hell, and he should not be saying the words that he's saying. The president didn't shy away from the possibility of further military action either. He stated that the U.S. would absolutely consider bombing Iran again if intelligence suggested they were enriching uranium to a concerning level.
He then took it to his favorite website, Truth Social, didn't he? To really hammer home his point. You know, he always uses Truth Social to really put out there what he couldn't say during press conferences and stuff. He just puts out everything that comes into his mind.
Yeah, and this isn't hyperbole, but I really like how he signs off of his Truth Social posts, or his truths. I don't know what they're called. Are they called truth bombs?
I don't know. I don't know what they're called. I'm not on Truth Social. I'm not on anything.
He always signs it off now, or at least not. I should know what to say always, but he has tended to now sign off with "Thank you for your attention in this matter." So he has a huge diatribe of all kinds of, weird things that he's saying, and then he'll always end it with "Thank you for your attention in this matter." And I find that great. I really do. Everyone should have their little catchphrase at the end. And I'm glad he's found his now. But you're asking what he wrote on Truth Social. Yeah, he went on there partially that day. Then again on Saturday morning of this week, he posted a lengthy message on his favorite website, and he accused Khomeini of lying about Iran's victory. And he reaffirmed his much-debated viewpoint that the U.S. strikes on June 21st obliterated 3 key Iranian nuclear facilities. And in a particularly striking claim, Trump said he knew exactly where Khomeini was sheltered and prevented Israel or U.S. forces from terminating his life, expressing disappointment that Khomeini wasn't so grateful about having his life spared.
Okay, now we have heard this on multiple occasions from the president, as well as leaked reporting from the U.S. and Israel. So does this finally confirm the fact that the U.S. told Israel to refrain from killing the supreme leader?
Well, it's not as simple as like a U.S. veto on this. What we know is that targeting Iran's supreme leader was indeed an option on Israel's table. Now, when Israel presented this, the U.S. assessed probably the juice wouldn't be worth the squeeze on this one. And so it indicates a calculated conclusion. The potential benefits of such an action were far outweighed by the enormous risks that would happen in this. And the U.S. likely determined the immediate fallout and uncontrollable escalation would create a more dangerous situation for both nations, Iran and Israel, and it would hinder long-term goals. Now, consequently, the U.S. may have countered that proposal with an alternative strategy. I think they really countered it with focusing on fostering regime change from within Iran.
Okay, so how is Iran reacting to Trump's direct, almost personal attacks?
Well, not well, but you probably expect that. Iran's foreign minister publicly stated on Friday that Trump needs to drop his disrespectful tone towards Khomeini if he generally wants a deal. He emphasized the Iranian people do not take kindly to threats and insults. And he also made a pointed reference to NATO chief Mark Rutte, bringing back the Trump daddy statements from last week, which we ended the podcast on. Is clearly framing this as Iran forcing the U.S. to step in.
It sounds like a deeply entrenched standoff with both sides refusing to back down. So what do you see as the immediate next steps or the most significant risks in this highly charged environment?
I mean, the immediate risk is miscalculation, and that's on all sides. I don't know if I sent you the post, but Iranian media started to talk about how they were going to assassinate Trump, and this has been something that Iran has been wanting to do since 2016. I think a miscalculation there, any movement forward with that would be devastating, and it would be devastating for Iran and the Iranian people. The rhetoric is so elevated, and the claims from both sides are so absolute that it leaves very little room for de-escalation. The sanctions right now are hurting Iran, and Trump did signal that he's willing to double down on that pressure. The danger here is that any perceived new aggression, even a minor incident, could quickly spiral into a wider conflict. We're seeing a clear clash of narratives, with both sides claiming victory, both sides showing no signs of compromise. The international community continues to urge de-escalation, but this direct back and forth in public between Trump and Khomeini, that makes it incredibly challenging.
Well, that's a very concerning outlook. I think now's the time for us to wrap up this episode.
Yeah, probably. No good news.
Certainly depressed now. Well, thank you, Carvin, for shedding light on this complex and rapidly evolving situation that we will continue to monitor very closely. Is there anything else you would like to discuss?
I have nothing else. How about you?
No. We need to begin our Sunday fun day now.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you for listening to This Week Explained. We hope you found it both informative and engaging. If you have any feedback or suggestions for future episodes, we would love to hear from you. For more in-depth coverage of these stories and more, be sure to follow us on social media at This Week Explained.
Tiana, thank you so much. And until next week, stay safe out there.